Hi, my name's Al and today I'm going to show you how to do a couple of fairly basic things to your rear shock. First of all, I'm going to show you how to replace the bushing which sits in the eyelet of the shock. This is a part that wears very easily, and other than replacing this, the air can service is the two main maintenance things that you can do at home to keep your shock and your full suspension bike running nicely. We covered the air can service back in April, but this is a new one for the video. Also, I'm going to show you how to change your air can size and go through the reasons why you would want to do that. You're going to need a few bits and bobs to carry out this work. Most important, if you can get one, is a vise. If not, you can use a workmate. Need some float fluid to lubricate the seals if we're taking the air can off. Some suspension specific grease, some pliers, a shock pump, some DU bushes, a small screwdriver or a pick, some paper towels, nice clean ones, a DU bush tool, or a selection of sockets if you're going to bodge it. That's your lot. Okay, before I show you how to replace the DU bush in your shock, I'm just going to explain why you would want to change the air volume of your shock. If you've got a small standard air can, such as this on your bike, you could possibly find that you're not getting to use all of the travel, in which case you'd probably want a bigger air can, such as one of these, to make it much easier to use all the available travel on your bike. And the opposite is true. If you've got a large air can on your bike and you're constantly bottoming it out, you'd want a smaller air can. Before we replace the DU bush, which sits inside the shock eyelet here, we need to remove these spacers or reducers. You can use pliers like this, or you can clamp the spacers in a vise and wriggle them out that way. Have to be very careful that we don't scratch the shaft of the shock here when we remove them, because that will cause an air leak and it'll be expensive to repair. The best way to remove a DU bush is with a DU bush tool such as this. This one's from BETD. You can use the tool with a hammer, but it's much better to use a vise. It's a lot less agricultural. The male part of the tool goes through the eyelet like so. The female sits on there. You simply press the bush out and straight out the eyelet, leaving that empty. There you go. If you don't have a DU bushing tool, then you can use sockets from a socket set. This shock got a 10mm which fits through the bore nicely, just contacts the inside of the bush. And to accept the bush as it comes out, this is a 9/16 socket, but you can play around, see what works best. It's a bit fiddly, but as long as you take your time, should do the job. It works exactly the same as the proper tool, really. There we go. In order to fit the new bush, just need to stick it in the vise. Soft jaws are a good idea, and just wind it in. To finish it off, make sure that the bush is sitting slap bang in the middle of the eyelet. You might want to finish it off with the socket, just to make sure it's pushed right into place, and that's, yeah, sitting in there nicely now. Nice and even on both sides. Ready to go back in the bike. In order to change the air can, you need to first of all clamp the shock in a vise or a workmate. Somewhere nice and clean, preferably. It's essential that you let all the air out of the shock before you take it apart. You normally unscrew an air can with your hand. If you can't, you can use a strap wrench, such as this, or you can wrap an inner tube around the air can to get some extra purchase. You can also do this certain frames. You'll be able to leave the top mount attached, bottom mount free, so you can remove the air can. Before we fit the air can, just need to lubricate the seals in the shock. Bit of float fluid on there. Put half the sachet inside the air can, like so. Slide it on. Add the other half. It's about 2.5 cc's, 2.5 mil either side, and then we can fit the air can fully. You might need to compress the shock to get the threads to engage, and just screw it home. You don't need tools to tighten that, just do it by hand. If you really get into tweaking your shock, then you can customise the size of the can even further. If you pop the circlip off here, like so, you can remove the extra volume spacer. So there's basically a hole in the can, same size as a normal air can. That gives you the additional volume. So we can take up some of that volume with grease. Make sure you use some suspension friendly grease, something that won't damage the seals. There's no moving parts here, but there are a couple of O-rings. So that takes up some of the volume. It's hard to be exact. And then just a case of refitting the sleeve. Over like so. Popping the circlip back into position. So by doing that, we've effectively made a smaller volume air can. Bit of a halfway house between the two sizes. It's not an exact science, but if you found that with this new air can you're bottoming your shock out too frequently, then you could add some grease, end up with a slightly smaller air can, and should fix it. If you're lucky enough to have a bang up to date Fox shock, then you can use the Fox Float Air Spring Volume Tuning Kit to change the air volume. So with the can off, pull this O-ring back, metal washer, and this is the spacer that was in there as standard on this particular shock. Just pop that out, be careful not to scratch anything, and by swapping that out for one of the other sized spacers that you get in the kit, then you've changed the volume of the shock. So that has effectively made it smaller, which, if you're having trouble with blowing through the travel on your shock, that will totally sort out. So obviously you need to put the air can back on, as you would if you're doing an air can service, and refit the hardware. It's good to go again. You'll need to refit the O-ring so you can set your sag properly, and finally press your spacers into place. It's really important that you keep on top of replacing your debushes as required, because it could cause damage to something more expensive such as your frame or some less expendable part of the shock. It's also important to keep your shock serviced. Doing your debush is no substitute for that at all, but hopefully we've shown you something there that will help save you a few quid, and also you can have a bit of fun customising the feel of your shock. Cheers, thanks for watching, bye bye.